this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 30 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Industry and Technology. Conformément à l'article 106.
Pursuant to Standing Order 1064, meeting requested by 4 members of the committee to discuss their request to undertake a study of Rogers Communications Service outage. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of Thursday, June 23rd, 2022. 4 members in the room, but I don't see anyone here. Good afternoon over Zoom, therefore. Pursuant to Standing Order 1064, we are in session. I see that Mr. Dong has the hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I want to thank you for calling this special meeting to address something that is, quite honestly, is frustrating a lot of Canadians. I definitely hear from my community, and I want to say to my over Zoom, you know, the outage is causing a lot of concerns, and I think the public is owed to some answers, and this is not the first time happening. So definitely the plan going forward and accountability attached to this service outage is something that we owe as a committee, we owe to the public in reporting. So I have a motion I'm going to move that pursuant to Standing Order 108(2), the committee undertake a study on the recent service outage and disruption experienced by Rogers Communications Inc. beginning on Friday, July 8th, 2022. Further, that the committee reviews 1, the causes of these widespread disruptions, 2, the impact service outage had on Canadian families, consumers, and business, including but not limited to the healthcare, law enforcement, and financial sectors. 3, best practices to prevent and mitigate similar widespread outages in the future. And 4, given reports about Rogers' customer not being properly notified, best practices to ensure that the impacted Canadians are updated about service outage in a timely and transparent manner going forward, and that the committee invite as witnesses representative from Rogers Communications Inc. and the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission, and that the committee devote 2 meetings to this study before July 30th, 2022, and report its finding to the House. With that, I move the motion for my honorable colleagues' consideration, and I hope you can support it and we can get out with our work in the study as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, MP Dong. I see MP Cram. MP Cram, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would just like to add to the motion that the Minister for Industry, the Honorable François-Philippe Champagne, also be invited to appear before the committee and be included in the motion in addition to the Rogers executives and representatives from the CRTC.
Thank you, MP Cram. So if I understand correctly, your amendment would be so after the Canadian Radio, Television, Telecommunications Commission and the Honorable François-Philippe Champagne, Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry of Canada, and that the committee, I think, so I think that's the part you're looking for, MP Cram. Thank you very much. Yeah, so we're just adding the minister. That's the amendment proposed by Mr. Cram. So is it accepted for the motion that was submitted by Mr. Dong?
And Mr. Chair, just one more quick question. I didn't hear. Was the motion for 2 meetings or for at least 2 meetings?
I didn't hear anything in what Mr. Dong has said. I'm not sure if he has the because we've had a lot of exchanges on this, so I'm kind of surprised that because in the so Mr. Dong, is there something you'd like to add to the text to the motion?
Yeah, just to clarify that in my motion, it reads as that the committee devote 2 meetings to the study before July 30th. So it's 2 meetings. I didn't put at least 2 meetings. And I'm happy to hear what other member has to say with regard to inviting Minister Champagne to the study.
Okay, so I get from what you're saying, Mr. Dong, that you agree with the amendment that's proposed, and thank you. I see Mr. Champoux, Mr. Boulris, Mr. Erskine-Smith. Mr. Champoux.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair, and I believe that there is a will shared by a number of colleagues to also invite the Minister for Public Safety. Given the impact that the outage had on emergency services, it would be pertinent to add the Minister to the list.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Champoux. And so there's another proposal. It's a bit of a shame because we all agreed on a text, but first of all, let's go to Mr. Boulris. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think that we all agree on the urgency and the necessity of this study to be started as quickly as possible. The NDP, my colleague Brian Messy, asked for 2 meetings. It's a good idea. The Minister for Industry needs to be present. I also favourably approve of the proposal put forward by Mr. Champoux that the Minister for Public Safety be invited. There are also public safety issues. If one cannot compose 911 to call an ambulance in case of a medical emergency in our house or at the park, for example, this is very problematic. There are questions of national security and safety. We cannot disregard the idea that there could also be potential cyber threats from various hostile nation states now and in the future. And so we need a strong and robust system. We have to be able to ask questions to all pertinent ministers. Minister for Industry, yes, and also Minister for Public Safety. Just before we continue, just to avoid a slippery slope, I would like to take the floor to give a summary of the motion as I understand it now. With amendments that are proposed from the Bloc and the NDP, that is to add the Minister for Public Safety and to have at least 2 meetings, it would be as follows. That, pursuant to Standing Order 182, the committee undertake a study on the recent service outages and disruptions experienced by Rogers Communications Inc. beginning on Friday, July 8th, 2022. Further, that the committee review 1, the causes of these widespread disruptions, 2, the impact service outages had on the Canadian families, consumers and businesses, including but not limited to the healthcare, law enforcement, financial sectors, 3, best practice to prevent and mitigate similar widespread outages in the future, and 4, given reports about Rogers customers not be properly notified, best practice to ensure that impacted Canadians are updated about the services outages in a timely and transparent manner going forward. And that the committee invites as witnesses representatives from Rogers Communications Inc., the Canadian Radio Telecommunications Commission, the Honourable François-Philippe Champagne, Mr. Marco Mendicino, and that the committee devote at least 2 meetings to the study before July 23rd, 2022, and report its findings to the House. These are the amendments I have heard from various parties, that is to invite the Minister for Public Safety to have a meeting before the 30th of July. Mr. Erskine-Smith, you have the floor.
Thanks, Joel. So a couple of things. One, I think it's important we hear from François-Philippe Champagne, and thanks, Michael, for making sure that got included there, because I think that was an oversight as far as it goes. But I think we're allowing ourselves to blow this thing up unnecessarily now when we start to add witnesses that are important witnesses to talk about public safety matters. And when I was on the Public Safety National Security Committee, we certainly talked about, and we had CSIS officials in to discuss about cyber attacks, and that's a really important conversation. That's not the conversation that we're having here in the context of this motion, right? So the importance of a narrow focus here is accountability, so we understand what happened, and ensuring that it will not happen again. And network resiliency is the responsibility ultimately here of CRTC and the industry minister, similar to in the United States, FCC, which I would say would be an important witness in this context because it's squarely on point. And so I think if we deal with it, I don't, maybe it makes sense to bring the public safety minister in if we hear testimony that would change my mind. But at the moment, I much prefer a very focused, given we're talking about 2 meetings and 2 meetings only, a very focused conversation with Rogers, CRTC, the industry minister, and we can have a conversation with other witnesses that would make a lot of sense. I would say FCC officials would make a lot of sense, but I think we're starting to expand the scope of this unnecessarily if we start to add other individuals at this point that aren't narrowly focused on the task at hand. How did this happen? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again?
Okay, so before I go to Mr. Dong and Mr. Cram, my understanding then is we have an agreement to have, as was agreed by all parties before this meeting, to have the Minister Champagne be invited, to have CRTC and Rogers. Now we're debating whether to invite the Public Safety Minister for these meetings. Mr. Dong.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Chair. I want to apologize to you that there was my mistake missing that part. As to Michael's friendly amendment, I'm happy to accept to add inviting Minister Champagne in the motion, which is fine. At the same time, I agree very much with Nathaniel's input. We want this study, I can speak for myself, I want this study to be focused on Rogers and CRTC, and to make sure, because again, this is not the first time that has happened. There's a lot of things that needs to be clarified. We've seen the subtle changes in communications from on Rogers' part over the last few days. So there's many questions needs to be answered, and I want the study to be focused on what happened on July 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crum.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The way I see it, we should have some short-term goals and some long-term goals for this study. In the short term, I think it's important to have Rogers and the CRTC and Minister Champagne appear before the committee as soon as possible. I believe the motion said by the end of this month. I would also like to leave the option open for when Parliament resumes in the fall to bring other relevant stakeholders as well. So let's focus on the short term in the short term, but not limit our options down the road. And I'm also in favor of having Minister Champagne appear. As for the public safety minister, I don't know how that got into the motion, but if there is will among the room, I'm certainly willing to go along with that. If we want to leave him until the fall, that's okay too.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cram. Mr. Champoux.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the comments. I heard what Mr. Erskine-Smith had to say with regards to focusing ourselves on what happened on the 8th of July. I just want to add some clarity. Some people were victims, dramatic victims of this outage because there was no more access to 911 and other emergency services. So when there are such important public safety issues, I don't think that we are straying from our objective by asking the pertinent minister to talk to us about what he has in mind with regards to fail-safes, a backup system. Or should we just say, well, public safety will always fall under the purview of other organizations, other committees. So I don't have an issue if that's the will of the committee to kick that discussion down the road, to focus on the outage and its consequences. But I think that we have to better study the collateral impacts of such an outage, because I think that this is a very grave affair. Thank you very much, Mr. Champoux. I think that no one is doubting this in the committee. Given the discussions we have had, all parties would like to cast a light on what happened in order to obtain answers to the important questions you've raised, especially with regards to public safety. That is the reason for which the motion as it is drafted speaks of at least 2 meetings, but this allows us to keep the door open in the fall for other meetings on the matter. It could be pertinent to have the Minister for Public Safety in the fall. We did agree on 3 witnesses for these 2 meetings at least for the short term to give you a bit more context, Mr. Champoux. From what I understand, Mr. Cram's amendment to have Mr. Champagne seems to be unanimously approved. There's still the question of the Minister for Public Safety as proposed by Mr. Champoux and Mr. Boulris, who, by the way, has now the floor. I would not like to go back to the issue of the Minister for Public Safety. The committee will decide. I have heard 2 different things in English. I hear 2 meetings. In French, it says at least 2 meetings. We asked the question to Mr. Dong, and he said I didn't say at least 2 meetings, I said 2 meetings. And in French, it's being said by the chair, at least 2 meetings. What I understand is at least 2 meetings before July 30th. That's what I heard. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it at least 2 meetings before July 30th, Mr. Dong?
Ce qui laisse la porte ouverte
Which leaves the door open to more meetings in the fall, is that right?
I proposed in the motion for 2 meetings before July 30th, but I'm open to adding the word at least. It's up to the committee.
Okay, that's what I'm seeing in the text of what was circulated. At least 2 meetings. So
I'm okay with
correct?
that. I'm okay with that.
Thank you. All right. So, est-ce qu'on a toujours un débat sur l'enjeu?
Do we still have a debate with regards to the Minister for Public Safety? Mr. Champoux, you are the one who raised it. Perhaps we could push it back to the fall so that we can study the outage. Yes, that is fine by me. Mr. Généreux. I agree that the Minister for Public Safety should appear. If we have 2 meetings and we coordinate to have both of them in the same day, in the motion, it is not established how many hours will be studied in total. Is it 2 times 2? Is it 2 times 4? Is it the same day? Is it consecutive days? Have we already provided for a more specific timetable? No, as far as I can understand, Mr. Généreux, it is up to the availabilities of the House. Given that there was a good agreement with other parties, I studied the matter with the clerk. There is an availability not next week, but the week thereafter for Monday 25th and Tuesday 26th of July. Perhaps having 2 meetings in one day, that has yet to be studied, but these will be meetings compliant to our usual 2-hour time slots. Mr. Deltel, Mr. Erskine-Smith, and then I think that we should move on to adopting the motion. It will allow us to kick things off for these 2 meetings at least. Mr. Deltel. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I think that everyone realizes that not everyone can be available in the middle of the summer. If the 2 ministers are available, and we can do this in one single day, this is just pure hypotheticals, of course. Imagine if we have a big block in the morning, a big block in the afternoon, Rogers CRTC in the morning, and then in the afternoon, both ministers, then we will be able to cover everything. But everyone has to be available at the right time. Perhaps we should have 3 hours for each block, 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, rather than 2. But we are here in an analogous negotiations because some people may not be available even in 2 weeks. Some people aren't in town, aren't even in the country sometimes. So we just have to make sure that everyone is available before we establish a strict timetable. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Deltel. Before inviting witnesses, we should perhaps adopt the motion. Mr. Erskine-Smith.
I think that's a wise counsel, Joel. So let's move to doing that.
Okay, donc est-ce que
Mr. Cram.
And Mr. Chair, for the sake of clarity, could we just get you to read the motion one more time so we're all on the same page?
Absolutely. So, do you mind if I skip because there is all the section? Okay, I'll go with the whole motion. That pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study on the recent service outages and disruptions experienced by Rogers Communications Inc. beginning on Friday, July 8, 2022. Further, that the committee review 1, the causes of these widespread disruptions, 2, the impacts service outages had on Canadian families, consumers, and businesses, including but not limited to the healthcare, law enforcement, and financial sectors, 3, best practices to prevent and mitigate similar widespread outages in the future, and 4, given reports about Rogers customers not being properly notified, best practices to ensure the impacted Canadians are updated about service outages in a timely and transparent manner going forward. And that the committee invite as witnesses representatives from Rogers Communications, Inc., the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, and the Honorable François-Philippe Champagne, Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry of Canada, and that the committee devote at least 2 meetings to this study before July 30th, 2022, and report its findings to the House. Is everyone okay with the text of the motion as I just read it? The motion is adopted. Thank you very much. Before I let you guys go and we adjourn this meeting, it's very important for us to adopt our budget for the small and medium-sized enterprises. So, Monsieur Généreux, vous avez la main levée.
You have your hand up, Mr. Généreux? Yes, very rapidly, as Gérard mentioned earlier. We have to make sure to perhaps envisage having both meetings on Monday on the 25th. We could come to Ottawa, have the meeting on the 25th, if it's possible, of course, if everyone's available. For the rest of the week, it might get a bit difficult. We could find seconders, but as members of the committee, we like to be the ones here to be present for a committee. If we can do that in one day, that would be ideal, if possible, of course. I've heard you, Mr. Généreux, and everyone loves Ottawa, but we also love our constituencies as well. We like to spend as much time there as possible, so I will do as much as I can with the clerk to find a way for us to accommodate everyone. Just a point, once adopted the budget request for SMEs, do I have the committee's consent to adopt the budget request, $17,750, all that has to do with our study on small and medium-sized enterprises. Mr. Clerk, do I have to follow a specific text, or do I just call for general consensus on this request for a budget? Thank you. I've heard you, Messrs. Généreux and Deltel. We will try to keep this as dense as possible in the week of the 25th. It will be my Honourable Vice Chair, Mr. Cram, who will preside over these meetings because I myself will not be available. You will be in excellent hands. Please be as just with Liberals as I am with Conservatives. That is my only request. On that, there are no more items. Thank you very much. Well, with the NDP and the Bloc, of course, let's not forget our friends on the other side as well. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned. Have a lovely end of the day. Thank you.
Au revoir.
Bonjour à tous.